Hello, I'm Bruce Larson, the creator of Legacy Guide. Thanks for your interest in the program. I wrote Legacy Guide really to fill in the gaps in a traditional estate planning. The issue that I feel with estate planning is that, a client goes in, talks to the estate attorney, they get everything set up, and then 2 weeks after they've signed the docs, they really don't remember what the heck's going on. And what's even worse is whoever they've selected as their executor or their successor trustee has probably never settled an estate before, so they're even more clueless. So you really need a place to organize everything about your estate. So let's just jump right into the program and take a look. There are 4 different logins. One is for the client, which that's obvious. That's the one we'll be focusing on. Then there's a team member login. A team member has limited access, view only, to the program. That's so that your kids can go in, take a look at things. Settlor login, that's whoever is your successor trustee or executor. They have the same rights that you do, because obviously you'll want them to be able to get into it so they can settle your estate when the time comes. And then there's the advisor login, which is identical to the client login, except that you'll first have to select which client you want to work with. So, taking a look at the client login, everything here is arranged somewhat in the order that you'd want to enter the data. Each screen has in-context help over on the right-hand side, as well as a brief video to go through what you need to be aware of while you're entering the data. First part of the profile, that's just the person, the client, their contact information. They can change their password anytime they want to. Not a lot of information there. And then the people, that's the people that are important to you, whether or not you're going to leave them anything or not. It's the people that you want to, that are just close to you. And the reason that you may want to enter somebody that you don't necessarily want to leave something to is at your passing, everybody that has a valid email in here and has received notification clicked will get a notification that you've passed. And you can also leave a final letter to anyone. So if there's just somebody, maybe it's a relative that you just want to bury the hatchet, once you're gone, and just maybe leave them a little note saying why they were important to you. You can also click whether or not their medical or financial powers of attorney, and whether they're going to receive a copy of your life story, which we'll cover in a little bit. So, people, nothing real earth-shattering there, other than you will want to have as much contact information as possible so that whoever is settling your estate can handle it. Typically, you also put in the your estate attorney so that they know how to contact him or her. And also you would put charities in here as well if you want to leave them anything. Now, for people that you're setting up a trust for instance, this granddaughter, maybe you're going to set up a trust for her for whatever she receives, because you don't want to just dump a bunch of money on a young lady like that. Then you would have another entry that would say Cindy Sample Separate Share Trust. That way you can direct legacy assets towards them. Okay, each one of these sections, you close the section just by clicking on the header again. Next section is assets, liabilities, and cash flows. We're primarily concerned about the assets, obviously. Each asset that you enter, you do want to have contact information for who to get a hold of once they've passed, so they know who to contact in order to retitle assets. And this isn't critical, and I'll show you why in a little bit, but you should at least have the person's name in there. And then over here is who you select is going to receive that. These are the 2 sons. They're receiving this account by transfer on death or a payment on death, basically the same thing. So you can set percentages of how you want that to happen. Very easy to enter another heir. Just select them from your people list. Select the transfer method, how things are going to transfer to them, the percentage, and whether they're a primary or a contingent. Also, you want to check whether or not they're a spouse. In our example, Sam his wife has already passed away, so it's just him, so everything is going to the kids one way or another. On the assets and liabilities, you also want to put in personal assets. This is where a lot of estate settlement has problems. I have a client who can't get into her garage because it's full of her aunt and her mother's clothes that she can't bring herself to throw away. So for stuff like this, let people off the hook. Here he's just, the heir is goodwill, so he's just going to give it all to charity. And then he's putting a note in here. It says if my sons want anything, they can have it, give the rest to goodwill. If they won't take it, throw it out. So that's just a way that you can let people off the hook for those assets so that they don't feel like they need to keep them forever. Same way with his home decorations. None of my decorations are worth much, but my sons can take anything they want. If they don't want something, give it to Goodwill or throw it away. So just take the pressure off your heirs. Also in this section, you can get really granular on the personal assets. Sam has a dog, and he loves his dog. His dog is going to go to Junior, and he's put a note in here. I think you and the kids love Chester as much as I do. There's a file in the top drawer of the filing cabinet with all his information so that they know what to do with Chester once the time comes. Also in this section is liabilities. Sam, for some reason, has a credit card balance of $20,000. I'm not sure why, since he has plenty of assets, but that is something that needs to be taken care of during estate settlement. Also, you need to put expenses in as well as income. Here's the income coming out of his presidential accounts, and it just says my presidential IRA distributions after withholding is transferred into my presidential taxable account. The amount of the distribution plus earnings on the taxable account are then transferred to my will's checking account. So really explain how this money's flowing so that your heirs know how to handle things. Final section of this is expenses. There's certain expenses that you want to stop immediately, like a Medicare supplement premium. That's probably auto-deducted. You don't want to continue to pay that once somebody's gone. But there are other expenses like the homeowners and vehicle insurance that you do want to continue to pay, obviously, because you want to safeguard those assets. You want to pay the property taxes, keep the utilities up so that if it's the middle of February, you don't get the heat shut off in the house before you can get rid of it. This is a very simple example to where Sam really only needs a will just for the personal assets, because he's got a beneficiary deed on his house, which isn't available in all states, but it is in Colorado, and he's got beneficiary designations and TODs on everything else. So really all his will is doing is settling out those personal assets. Okay, next section, we obviously have to have some estate planning documents. So in here we have the powers of attorney. Sam has a prepaid funeral plan. If a client doesn't have one of those, they should include a disposition of last remains so the family members don't get in a big fight over what to do with the person's whose past remains. We have the will in here, and then you can also have documents that are assigned to particular assets. I mentioned earlier that you really don't need to fill in all that information about who to contact for a financial asset. If you just put the statement in, upload a fairly recent copy of the statement, then that'll have the advisor's name, phone number, all that good stuff, so that they'll know who to contact. Same with utilities, anything like that, if you want to just save some data entry work on putting all of that in. Okay, after documents is the settler section. You can have a primary and a contingent. You can have dual primaries if you want. Typically not a good idea, but you can do that. When you add a settler, they now have a login. You set their password, and for a lot of my clients, they don't want the settler to have access to their assets. They just don't want them to know how much they have. They don't want to take the incentive away from their kids to continue to save and earn money. So they just leave an envelope with my card in it that says contact this guy once I'm gone, and he'll walk you through the estate settlement. And basically I just give them the sign in, and then and walk them through it. They should be able to handle it on their own. You can also set up team members, and you can assign them various levels of access. For instance, Fred, the son, he has access to the people section, the assets, and full access to the documents. While Julie, the granddaughter, she has no access to that. All she's got access to is the life story section, and the reason for that is she's very good with computers, and she's helping Sam set up his life story. So the life story section basically just allow you to upload photographs, and then you can put in whatever is necessary to explain what was going on. So here's a family photo. It says this was me when I was 4 years old. I always wanted to be a cowboy, and he goes through kind of explaining his family and different things like that. And so we start off with his baby picture, them as a little boy, getting married, when Junior was born, his wife Grace, who's since passed away, skiing, and then we see the last picture of Grace. Grace loved the mountains. This is from our last hike we took together. So you can get as personal as you want to be, but you can basically just leave your life story behind. Okay, here we also have a section for the Legacy Guide Advisor. This is primarily for the settler to know who to contact to figure out how to get this estate settled. So you'd put yourself in there as the advisor. And then we come to the report section. So several different reports here. The estate balance sheet, that just goes through all the assets, who's going to receive those assets, and we also have estate distribution to heirs, so that a lot of people want to equalize their estates. So that just goes down through and shows for each person receiving something just how much they will receive in value. And then the biggest report here, the most important one, is the estate settlement instructions. If we've got everything set up correctly and we've got the docs to back them up, then this explains exactly how we transfer ownership of assets. It says this is his checking account, and the instructions say a non-retirement assets that passes by contract, passes by the use of payment on death designation. An asset with this description is not included in the probate estate. So it just goes through and explains, how we get this retitled to the person that's supposed to receive it. Also in here is the personal property memorandum. It's valid in most states as an attachment to the will, very similar to a living trust Schedule A that just goes through the personal assets and what should happen to them. So in the personal property memorandum, we start with the dog. He goes through the dog, then we get to the clothes. So all those personal assets can have very detailed instructions on what's going to happen to them. The client signs and dates this, places it with the will, and then we're set to go on that. Okay, so that very briefly goes through the functionality of the program. It's really just a place to organize an estate. There is more detail, obviously, throughout the help text, as well as in the videos that are attached. So walk through it, see if you can get, if you do just want to look over the site, just go to legacyguide.com, and it explains the Legacy Guide process, the interface, what the menus are, what each section does. And then I also have an estate planning basics that just kind of walk a novice through how estates are settled, which states allow transfer on death for real estate and motor vehicles. My contact information's here, so you can easily get a hold of me. And if you have questions, just give me a call, and hopefully I can answer everything. Thanks for your interest, and I look forward to working with you.